Welcome to Look Behind the Look, the new podcast that examines iconic looks in film, television, music, and fashion history. I'm your host, Tiffany BARTOK. Hey everybody, how are you? I paused a little bit for the answer to that because we all need to sort of check in and see how we are already in 2021. It's been quite a ride so far, but here we are. And here we are going to talk about Sarah Cimino, and I'd been going back and forth with Sarah for months because you may or may not know that Moulin Rouge is an obsession of mine, and most likely it is of yours as well. And I wanted to discuss the looks that Sarah created for the Broadway musical Moulin Rouge ever since I saw her executing them on this stage at a fabulous MAC event. MAC put on this event with Kabuki and her. It was promoting the show, and at that point I hadn't seen the musical yet, but the film is my everything. And I did get to see the show eventually, and it was the last musical that I saw before the shutdown. So going through the visual elements for this episode, I became overwhelmingly sad at the loss of Broadway. I mean, I knew I was sad already, but to really experience, going through all of these amazing looks and it feeling so alive, it really made me feel like I cannot wait for the day till Broadway comes back. And Sarah and I talk in this episode about how you can support those in the Broadway community who've suffered greatly since the shutdown. So make sure you listen for ways to contribute if you can to the Actors Fund and other organizations like that. Sarah Cimino is a New York City-based makeup artist, and she specializes in theater makeup. She received her BFA from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts Experimental Theater Wing and makeup certification from Mess Makeup Studio and Makeup Designery in Soho. She's been a member of the Juilliard Drama faculty since 2009 as a stage makeup instructor, and since 2010, she supervised the wig and makeup shop in Juilliard's production department. So I would like to coin the term Ivy League makeup artist for her, Sarah. But there's more. She is the company makeup artist and makeup artist designer for Company XIV. So check that out online if you haven't already, if you're not familiar with it. Super, super interesting and really amazing looks. Her additional theater credits include the Santa Fe Opera, Manhattan School of Music and the Lincoln Center Theater, Broadway's Mary Poppins, the New York City Ballet. She's led makeup workshops for MAC Cosmetics. And here's Sarah. I'm here with Sarah, and wait, Sarah, you say your name correctly for me, your last name, because I know that probably some people say a hard C or a soft C. So
it's Cimino, kind of like Pacino.
Okay, so Italian. Yes.
So Italian.
Nice. And I had the fortunate experience of seeing your masterclass at the Mac Pro. It was a huge event in the theater with the beautiful set with Kabuki and you, and you were doing the looks, and Kabuki was doing the blondes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
And then
it was the look they'd done for the fashion show that was inspired by Moulin Rouge. So it was a really cool collaboration.
Right. And then you were doing, I think you did two looks.
I did two looks from the show, and then one of the
Yes.
performers did their own full look.
Right. Remind me of the actor who did that.
That was Jay, who played Baby Doll.
Okay. And you are, you designed all the makeup looks for Moulin Rouge, the musical on Broadway. And I've already told our listeners your bio at this point of the interview. So but I could sit here and flatter you all day. You're very accomplished and amazing, and you have a long history in stage and theatrical makeup. And I wanted to ask you how you got started. That's how we always start, is your Sarah origin story and how you found yourself here.
Sure. I mean, I always wanted to make theater. I loved theater. We grew up with my sisters. We all watched the old movie musicals, and we had our big trunk of dress up, and we'd take out our wigs and our boas, and we were always putting on a show. And theater was such a source of magic and joy. It still is.
Where did you grow up?
Actually, we moved a lot when I was a kid. So I was born in the city, and we moved 8 times. We kind of ended up in Florida, which is where I did elementary, middle school. And then I moved back to the city when I was 18. But theater was always something that I was really drawn to, and I always wanted to do. And makeup It didn't really occur to me as sort of a career until later on, although definitely growing up, for me, it was a personal source of self-expression and, experimenting in transformation. And I was always really drawn to and interested in aesthetics and the way things look and how things are designed and how we express things visually. So when I went to college, I studied theater. It was an experimental theater program, which was really amazing. It kind of drew a lot of different types of artists and young theater makers, directors and dancers and performers. And
Where was this?
this was at NYU.
Oh, wonderful.
So within their acting department, and I knew at that point that I didn't want to be an actor, but I definitely I wanted to do storytelling and I wanted to make theater. And one of sort of the focuses of that program was making original work and sort of finding your voice and finding how you tell stories and how to express yourself. And for me at that time, I was really interested in mythology and magical realism, and I wanted to sort of create these really heightened surrealistic worlds. And I found the faces of my sort of co-students to be very limiting. Everyone's like 19 and beautiful, and that's very specific, but I sort of really wanted to tell different stories and make different characters. So I started mask making and sort of taught myself, and I would make these sort of new faces to put on their faces. And
can you explain a little more about mask? I went to art school as well at University of the Arts, and I took
Brilliant.
stage makeup, but I didn't take the mask class because it freaked me out. Isn't that funny? Can you explain it a little bit more?
It's pretty intense. I mean, I was self-taught. There's a really incredible prop makers mask making book that I bought, and I sort of in my apartment and in my dorm rooms, I would sort of get all the paper mache and just like sculpt these faces. And before I even went to makeup school, I taught myself to hand lay the beards and paint all these wrinkles and create animals. And I mean, mask is it's a really ancient form of theater and expression and creating characters and sort of be put on this face. And
you paper mache it on an actor.
I would paper mache. No. I wasn't at that point doing sort of sculpting the way you do prosthetics. I would actually buy these sort of pre-made, those like white masks. I would paper mache over that, or I would do balloons. It kind of depended on. I was very self-taught. It was definitely sort of experimenting and figuring out as I went. But putting on, assuming another face. When you change how you look, you really change who you are. It changes everything. It changes your physicality. It changes how you move and how you express yourself. So, and masks and makeup they're really related. Obviously, I think makeup is a step more intimate because you're working directly onto the face rather than sort of assuming a face over another face. That was kind of really my into to sort of working in this way physically to create characters. And my junior year, I did a semester abroad in Florence, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. And I had an Italian opera class, and I saw my first opera, which I just never seen one before. And
which was it?
So we saw a lot, but the first one we saw was on VHS. It was Mephistopheles, and I just had no idea. It was so epic and mythic and heightened, and the costumes and the sets, they were so grand, and the makeup, right? It was so similar to what I had been doing with these masks. They sort of literally repainted these faces on top of the singers' faces, and it was just like this moment of revelation. It's like, oh my God, like this is that's it. That's the thing I'm supposed to do. And I sort of have like never looked back. I came back and I spoke with my advisor, and was like, is that too specific of a thing to say that I want to do? And she's like, well, no, but you should probably go to makeup school. And of course, I think if it was something that I really wanted to pursue professionally, I needed training. So I did, while I was still in college, I did like a week-long course. I don't even think this makeup school exists anymore. It was Mess Makeup Studios.
Mess?
Like
in New York?
Yeah, in New York. It was really small, but it was really amazing because I think up to that point, I'd really only done makeup on myself and on my friends, and I was like, can I do this on other people?
Mhm.
It's very different.
Isn't it different? I
And
mean, I don't think people realize, when they have the YouTube channels and stuff and they do it
yeah,
on themselves all day, what would you do if you had another face? It's
well,
very
and
scary.
yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of responsibility putting someone's face in your hands.
Right.
But I think it was really sort of affirmed to me. I loved it. It felt amazing. And actually, they were great. They provided us a lot of models, really diverse skin
Mm.
tones and types of faces. So I got a lot of experience right off the bat, sort of working with different faces, and I loved it. And I think that was sort of beauty based, that
Ah,
training. And I felt that sort of beauty was something that kind of I naturally understood and I could practice and came more easily to me. But I definitely wanted to get training in sort of more special effects and character work. So after that program, the summer that I graduated, I did makeup designery. And at that time, I don't know if they still just have this summer intensive, but they had a summer intensive just for character work.
oh,
And it was great. It was like 3 months, 8 to 5, bald caps, prosthetics,
oh, wow.
aging, airbrush, like all the things that I probably couldn't have taught myself. And yeah, and that training was amazing. I just loved it. And
Did you want to go into film, or did you want to have all bases covered? Like you wanted to do special effects or you wanted to do theatric?
I think like ultimately I knew theatrical makeup was the thing that I wanted to do, but it is
Okay.
like a really specific specialty and
Yeah.
not sort of widely available for work. So when I was starting
Right.
out, that sort of wasn't on my radar of like I'm only going to take theatrical jobs. It was like I will say
Sure,
yes
sure.
and do anything and everything, beauty counters, films,
Yes.
weddings, all of it, and I did all of it. And I think, and then definitely I've done films and TV, and I'm certainly open to that. I think theater is my first love, and I'm really interested in creating characters and doing that kind of storytelling in that way. That certainly doesn't mean it will be like the only thing that I ever do, but it was my ultimate goal, and I've sort of been able to work towards
Sort
it
of. Yeah, you've
over the
been
years.
killing it. Obviously, you are the go-to for sure. Was Mary Poppins your first Broadway show?
Mary Poppins was the first show that I did. I did swinging on that show.
Okay.
So when
So
you
it was like a
swing on a show, there's
training.
a yeah. Well, there's very few shows that actually have a dedicated makeup
Ah,
artist that runs the show, and so that person is on the show full time, which is a lot. It's 8 shows a week, and
yes.
if it's a long run, it's could be years and years and years that you're sort of doing the same show. So if that person needs to take a vacation or call out sick, they need to have what's called a swing, who knows their track, who can step in and run the show for them.
And are you
So that was
responsible for like quick changes and everything when you're this? Okay.
yeah. And so usually if there is a makeup artist dedicated to the show, it's because there's very quick changes or something very extensive that needs to happen for a makeup look. And so yeah, it's a lot. You have like 3 chances when you're swinging, sort of walk into the show. And these, especially those big Broadway musicals, they're like these big machines. It's bigger than you can imagine, this sort of backstage world. And so you're sort of watch the makeup artists do the whole thing once, and
My
then the
God.
second time you sort of tentatively step in with like all the notes that you took and you try it and they sort of guide you, and then the third time you do it, you really are kind of on your own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's
That's it.
definitely yeah, it's like you got to be quick. So yeah, that was a really cool experience.
Oh my God. Okay, so that was swing on Mary Poppins, and
Yeah.
then if is there a staff? No, there's just you. Is there somebody for wigs? Like break it down as far
Yeah,
as
sort of
who does
backstage.
wigs, who you have to do both, right?
No, well, on Broadway, definitely there's like a wig crew.
Okay.
So there's a wig designer, then there's a wig crew, and so they do all the pre-show, putting all the performers into their wigs. They do the styling. They run the track throughout the show, so they do all the changes, and then they maintain the show. So that's the wig crew. There's very few shows that have a makeup crew, like
Okay.
Beetlejuice, Lion King, sort of Phantom of the Opera. And Moulin Rouge doesn't have a crew, for instance. All the performers do do all their own makeup. So in that case, there's a makeup designer who is hired, who creates the look, who teaches the look, and then the performers do all the makeup themselves.
Got it. Okay. So walk me through the process for Moulin Rouge. Then well, first of all, tell me about the day you got your Moulin Rouge job. Like, what was that?
I mean, it was such a dream. It
Yeah.
was my first Broadway show, and definitely, you know, it's a movie that I love. That I was just
Yes.
so thrilled. I sort of got brought on really early in the show's conception. It sort
Oh,
of had different levels. So it started as a workshop, and I
right.
think it was like must have been 2017
So long
in
ago. Yeah.
winter.
Yes. And it was in what city was that?
It was here. It was in the Lower East Side first. They did their world premiere in Boston, but
Okay.
they did a workshop of the sort of early stage of the show. And Kathy Zuber was already brought on as costumes and David Brown as wigs. And it wasn't fully designed. They sort of had gestures of a
Ah.
costume. And they brought me on. Again, we didn't sort of fully design makeup for the workshop, but we wanted sort of small gestures, so little smoky eyes for the women, just to sort of
Ah.
get the mood and the ambiance started. So the workshop was really cool to be sort of part of such an early stage of an original Broadway show. And then the world premiere was in Boston,
Okay.
the summer of 2018, and then a year later it opened on Broadway.
And how did they find you?
So Kathy Zuber's assistant, Wilberth, was familiar with my work with XIV,
Uh-huh.
which is a burlesque dance company that I've designed makeup for many, many years. And I think they were really, we have like a very specific aesthetic at XIV. Is, you know, very smoky eyes, glowy skin. I mean, we do some sort of crazy makeup looks too, but that's kind of like the makeup that we're known for. And I think they were really interested in bringing that aesthetic to this production
Nice.
of Moulin Rouge. So I was really lucky to sort of have made that connection, and that they were interested in the work.
Nice, nice. And so when you were developing the looks, did they refer to XIV and the work that you had done already, or did you start from scratch?
Well, I mean, I definitely it was for me. It was very clear what I envisioned for the makeup for this. I mean, this world it's something that I live in all the time. This like 20s, 30s cabaret dance
Yes.
hall. I love it. So I think they sort of trusted that was the world that I know and could create. I would put together and assemble a lot of research and images just to sort of articulate to them visually what was in my head and what I was
Okay.
imagining for the makeup.
Makeup.
Um, but there was a lot of trust in sort of what my vision was for the.
So would you present like a face chart and sketch out this is
Yeah, I think well early on, actually I have some here. I
Yay.
can show you.
Just casually have your
You know,
original.
just
Yeah.
playing around.
Amazing, amazing.
But early on, for sort of those are sort of early discussions about the costume tracks and the hair and the makeup. So I would sort of put together these like
Oh my
inspiration
god. Dita!
for
Oh my
Tita, Josephine
god.
Baker, of course.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's less of like this is specifically what the makeup's going to be, and more like the mood, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling that the makeup wants to feel like.
Oh,
This one's a favorite. This is for Ziedler. I pulled a lot of like vintage magician posters, and there's like a Marcel Marceau there. Um,
wow.
yeah, so just I find images can be much more articulate than words sometimes when
Of
you're trying to,
course.
if you're like, oh, I really want her to look glamorous, that can mean so many different things
Yes.
to different people.
40s glamorous, 90s glamorous.
Right.
Yeah.
So I find like when I'm very clear with like pulling images that sort of reflect what I'm thinking, there's less room for misinterpretation of what you mean very specifically. So yeah, so I would start with these kind of
Wow.
mood boards to present, and then sort of the next phase for me would be to do fittings with the performers, and
See their
so I
costumes.
would I'd meet with each of them one on one just for like a makeup one on one, and Mac sponsored the show, so I sort of pulled a curated kit of Mac colors and products that I thought would work. Um, and I also present for the performers this like research and inspiration, just so they can kind of get an idea of where I'm headed. And again, so it can be a very vulnerable thing for a performer just to sit down and like put their face in your hands. So I like them to know where we're going, what I'm thinking, what I'm envisioning, making sure that it also feels comfortable for them, and like it reflects also what they've imagined this character is.
That's what I'm super interested about, because I mean that's how I learned to do makeup was because of acting. I only did it. That's how I felt like I was finally getting into character, was,
Yeah,
you know, like the makeup that she would wear, and you know, it
exactly.
was like an obsession. So did you ever have a push and pull with an actor about like, oh, I didn't see it that way? Did you
I
ever,
mean,
maybe not on this show, but ever?
it can happen. I think, I really respect actors, and like what you just described, that like it's really unique, I think, in theater that the performer does their own makeup. It's not like that in film and TV, fashion, there's always a makeup
Right.
artist. But I think that the makeup is in the performer's hand, and they have this moment
Yeah.
where they're sitting in front of the mirror and they're sort of having this ritual transformation from
Oh my
from
God, I
themselves
just
into
got
this
chills.
character. Yeah, it's a really
Yeah.
profound moment. And it's one that I really respect. So when I'm working with a performer, I know the makeup is going to be in their hands. If you're working with if you're lucky enough to work with a certain caliber of actor, they're really thinking about, they've done all this emotional work to sort of become this character, and
Right.
they're going to be really also open to this like physical transformation as well. So I think of it kind of as a collaboration. I never want it to feel like
Yes.
I'm imposing my vision upon them, that this is what I've imagined, and it's a lot of deliberation and very specific. But they are also the ones that have to be out there embodying this character 8 shows a week. So I want to make sure that it really feels right to them and reflects who this character is to them as well. I think like Baby Doll J, who we talked about
Yes.
earlier, is kind of a really good example of an actor bringing a lot to the table for a makeup and for a role. So Baby Doll is one of the four Lady M's,
Mhm.
but he's in drag. He's a male performer, in female costume and wig and makeup. And Jay has a lot of experience in drag. And early in the workshop, he'd sort of done his own makeup, and he did such a beautiful job. And there's specific products and process that he knows and loves that make him feel really, really good. So that's when we had our fitting. It's definitely something that I wanted to use and start with as the basis for the makeup, and then kind of combined what he knew and what he loved, and how he liked to look, with what my idea was, for all the Lady M's, which is like this smoky eye with sort of a strong flush and a dark lip. So I think that was definitely a collaboration of what he imagined for this character that he was originating, and what I was also imagining overall for the makeup. So
Okay, that's, and then what other looks did you love putting together and designing? Which, I mean, all of them, obviously, but I know that you're really partial to the clown
I am partial to the
makeup.
clown. I do. I mean, I love a big theatrical makeup, and in this show, because so many of the performers have to play so many different characters. It for the
Yes.
most part, we had to sort of have one look that kind of tracked throughout the show. But the clown was one chance to sort of kind of create this like fully theatrical character, which I really enjoyed and loved. And I also love the Ziedler makeup. Again, I love
Ah,
good old school, like powdery, putting on a show
yes, yes,
makeup.
and it's slightly
Oh
fading, you
yeah,
know, oh my
yeah,
God, it's
yeah.
it's really effective, and it can invoke so much emotion, you
Well,
know.
and I mean, you got Danny Burstein wearing it too, so it's like he's just like a legend, and he brings it to life in such a way. It's like he's not wearing the makeup's not wearing him. It's like,
Yeah.
and I loved the Satine makeup. I think there's I really wanted to sort of make her feel distinctive from the ensemble, which I knew I wanted this sort of more sootier, smoky eye and darker lip, and then the Lady M's, which sort of had that plus this sort of strong flush. But for Satine, I really wanted it to feel like it was exuding a glamour that wasn't sort of from the outside. It
Mm.
was like coming from the inside out. And so we really focused on a lot of glow for her skin, really sort of contour and sheen. And it's such a she's such a Karen's so beautiful, and her costumes are They're
Oh,
so incredible.
divine.
So yeah, all
Yes.
with her hair and her costumes, and it just putting that all together was a joy.
What is your secret to making things last during those long hours of performing?
I think strategic touch-ups and the products
Touch-ups.
yeah. I don't like to over powder personally. I
Mm-hmm.
like a little sheen and texture
Mm-hmm.
to the skin. I mean, I think some periods and some looks call for really matte skin, but for me, that's in this show as well. I really kind of wanted highlights and glow to the skin. So I think it's just about sort of strategically touching up and removing shine rather than over powdering to get rid of it.
Removing the shine instead of over powdering.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's really, yeah, that's
and
something
and
that
also like layering, so sometimes I'll layer a cream blush with a powder on top so that there's sort of softness, but those layers help it last. As something starts to fade, there's something underneath it.
how would you talk about the difference between burlesque makeup and is there such a thing as burlesque makeup?
So I think like burlesque is an interesting term, and it's an interesting
Ah,
category because it's very encompassing. So I don't think that there's one thing that you can really define. I think we sort of associate burlesque with like Adidas, that sort of
uh-huh.
pin-up, striptease.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely part of it. But burlesque is like a performance genre. It has really like historical roots,
1800s roots.
1840s vaudeville minstrel
1840s.
shows,
Right.
and there's like elements of circus, and like certainly the sort of striptease is part of it. But I really think it's much broader and
Mm.
more encompassing than that. And so I don't think there is like one specific thing that defines burlesque. I mean, I really like when I think of burlesque, yes, there's a lot of glamour to it, but there's also like a lot of humor, and it
Grit.
can be like very irreverent, and yeah, it can be like dark and subversive as well.
Wow.
I would say like the overarching element is just kind of an openness and embracing pleasure and embracing beauty in whatever that means to you, and
Yeah.
that's all like welcome. And
That's really interesting. That's exactly how I feel about like there's a exhibitionism that is different. Like when I think of Dita, I always say to her, like, why are you not scary to me? Like sometimes like an aggressive like thrust is like it's not scary, but like just I reject it, you know.
yeah,
And there's something about Moulin Rouge, burlesque, true artistry of it that like is inviting and inclusive
and I think
and
it's because it's coming
special.
from a place of pleasure and welcome, and there's no
Yeah.
shame there, and nobody's being pushed away. It's like
Mm,
everyone is being welcome, and this way that I think is what makes it so appealing and
that's
and
interesting.
so welcoming.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Would you tell us a little bit about Company XIV? Like what is it and how did you come to it? And
So XIV is they're a burlesque dance company based in Brooklyn. I've been with XIV for 13 years. I met Austin, who's the director and choreographer, right when he graduated from Juilliard, and there was a costume designer we both knew mutually, and he had sort of just started this company, and they were looking for a makeup artist. They were performing at a festival, and it didn't really strike me at the time, but thinking back, how unique it was that even in those early days, right off from the start, Austin really valued makeup and found makeup to be a very important part of the company and important part of this like visual and theatrical world that he was creating. And he always had this vision for the work and vision for the company that was much bigger than just presenting dance or presenting choreography. He was really looking to sort of like create this experience. So I really think of XIV, and it's really hard to describe. I think words don't quite do them justice. Have you been able to go to a
I
show?
haven't we were going I feel like there was a nut like a Christmas.
They do a Nutcracker
Yes, yes,
Rouge
that's what we were we were
every year.
going to attend that, my friend Jamie and I, and then we didn't come together to do it, and then it was gone. And so
Yeah.
that is an intention that I have. Yes.
Well, they will be back, and
Okay.
I hope you will go. Yeah,
Of
I've always thought
course.
of them as like being in this moment what the Moulin Rouge was. You know, it's definitely
Yes.
this like kind of gorgeous, inclusive,
Yes.
highbrow, lowbrow, glamorous underworld. And yeah, it's
Yeah, I follow it on Instagram, of course, and I mean, it's astonishing how like the images are like you're like going along, and then you're like, wow.
yeah, they're gorgeous in every way.
Yes,
And
yes.
so yeah, I feel like I've grown up with them because when we just sort of started out together, and I feel so lucky that we found each other.
I was gonna ask you, I forgot before I changed the subject, I forgot to ask you what the handoff is like when after you've designed the looks and you probably just attend the show for a long time and
Mhm.
tweak things. And then when do you, it must feel weird to step away from the show
Yeah,
and
I mean,
know that it's,
it's a part of the process,
yeah.
the sort of letting go. And I
Oh,
think you have to know that it's going to be out of your hands,
yeah.
and just sort of accept that part of it. So yeah, I'm there. I sort of start the fitting process while rehearsals are going on, and I sort of document it, take photos, share it with the costume designer and the director for feedback, and I will put together makeup kits for each performer, and I draw face charts, like individualized face charts for everybody. Um, and so when they start when they start working on the stage with the costumes and all the lights, they're also in makeup, full makeup and full hair, so that we can see right off the bat what is working, maybe what isn't working. And I'm there throughout the tech process, checking in with the performers, making sure they feel comfortable, that everything's working for them. Also teaching the understudies and the swings who are going to sort of be covering different tracks, make sure that they feel ready if they ever have to go on, they have what they need and
Oh,
they know how to do it, which I think they have the hardest job in the industry there.
I would
They're
not want it.
superheroes.
But
They're
that's what you
incredible.
have to do to get to where you are, yeah? What
Yeah.
is a path for like, "Hi, I'm 19 and I'm from Kentucky and I wanna do Broadway." Like, what
Yeah.
do you say to that person?
I would say that it's about cultivating relationships,
Mhm.
and just, because again, it's a very specific, it's a small world. You really want to create relationships with your collaborators, directors, producers, of course, but costume designers and
Mhm.
wig designers. Those are sort of going to be your kind of core connection and your core collaborators. And yeah, it doesn't it you might want to do Broadway, but there's to get there, there's so many other venues that you can start with. There's a lot of operas, big opera houses, but also regional theaters, summer stocks. It can be hard to sort of join the team of Kathy Zuber, but you're going to meet costume designers that are kind of going to be the next and up
Mhm.
and coming costume designers in the field. So yeah, really just working on building those collaborative relationships
And what at
wherever
what
you
point
are, however you can.
yes, and at what point do you have to join the union or start thinking about that?
So the makeup designers don't necessarily fall under the union. I'm in
Ah,
the union though. The union definitely, it's if you want to do work in film and TV, you have to be in a union.
yes.
And most members who are Broadway crew, wigs or makeup or hair, are also in the union.
Is it the same union, Sarah?
Yep,
Is it okay.
it's $7.98. So you can
Yes.
apply as a hairdresser or
Got
as
it.
a makeup artist. If you apply as a hairdresser, you have to have your license, and there's different sort of qualifications for each field, and then a certain amount of hours, that professional hours that you work, and you want to, I think, work to build your portfolio to be diverse, showing that you can do beauty makeup, you can do character makeup, lots of different skin tones and skin types. And yeah, so taking the time when you're first starting out just to really get your hands in as many sort of expressions of makeup as you can now.
Yes. I'm looking at my notes. What are you working on now? What are you doing now? Well, and I also want to talk about, let's first address that the pandemic
Oh, that.
situation. Yes, luckily we saw oh that. Luckily we saw Moulin Rouge literally like 2 seconds before it closed. It
I'm
was
so
that
glad you did.
I feel so lucky because I think about that night so much. I mean, of all the show, it was that one, and then the night before the shutdown, we saw Virginia Woolf.
Oh,
So I know, and so it's like those two experiences and
amazing.
community experiences. If to have any, it's like those interactive. Oh, I miss it so
Yeah,
much, and just
there's no equivalent.
oh my God. So it's such a loss,
Yeah.
obviously. And a lot of friends that are actors on Broadway, and it's been a very sad time. And so what are people doing now who have lost this
It's hard. I mean, I
outlet?
think, yeah, particularly for performers, they've worked their whole and trained their whole lives for these careers they're so specific. So it's devastating, and I think it didn't have to be so hard. I think if
Mhm.
there was more federal support and
Mhm.
acknowledgement of like you can't work, we will support you until you're able to reopen your industry. I think it wouldn't have to be quite so devastating for everybody. So I know a lot of people have left the city, hopefully temporarily. But it's, a lot of performers have fallback jobs like waiting tables or being a nanny, and those fallback jobs are also not available at the moment. So it's really tough. It's tough, and I think
How
there's
can Oh,
yeah
sorry. How I was just I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no
how
no
can people support, like Save Our Stages? Like, are there petitions?
Yeah,
Are
there
there
are. And I think there's a group that started on Instagram. It's called Be an Arts Hero, and they're doing a lot of amazing advocacy.
Be
And
an
I
arts
think
hero?
sort of seeing what kind of petitionings they're doing, speaking to local legislation, just to, again, support federal aid, federal funding, however you can support arts. A lot of theaters are like XIV, they're offering digital content.
Mhm.
So, buying tickets to whatever digital virtual
Okay.
programming, supporting that way. I know a lot of performers have just started personal Venmos. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that again, it falls to like individual giving to sort of support the community. I wish it was sort of more systemic.
Yeah.
But that's not to say, I mean, people are so generous, and I think people love the arts, and it means a lot to so many people. So yeah, I think people really want to support, and there are ways that you can.
And the Actors Fund has been really great, I noticed.
Yeah.
They've been a lot of people have gotten grants from them that I know, and so I suppose contributing to Actors Fund would be like a good
Yep.
source of donations and stuff like
Definitely.
that. If they don't have an individual actor, they
Yeah.
can. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And you teach at Juilliard,
I
yeah?
do.
And what do you teach there?
I teach a stage makeup class. I teach makeup to the drama students and also to the dancers. So I've been teaching virtually, which has been, an adjustment.
Talk about that a
Technology
little
is
bit,
not
yeah.
my.
It
Yeah, I mean, it's, usually I usually use the students as my models, and my only option, well, it's my son or myself, and that would never work. So I'll have to be my own model for the lessons, which is definitely, you know, not ideal, but
right.
we're making it work. And mostly it's just hard. Zoom is amazing. It's allowed us to connect in this way, and I think everyone's just trying to do the best that they can with
Yes.
with what we have, and it's limiting, but it definitely it still allows connection. So yeah,
Do
it's
you
been.
think we'll go back? Do you think people are hungry to go back, or will it
I think
land
that
here?
I think that there'll be a mixture. I
Aha.
think, I mean, something that I've been considering is, I've always taught my stage makeup. I teach at Juilliard, and I teach at NYU grad, and um, at acting conservatory here in the city. But it never would have occurred to me that I could maybe potentially teach elsewhere in the country.
Right.
But like a platform like Zoom would make that possible. So I think maybe looking at how we're able to connect in person, but also sort of connect virtually, it sort of does expand our options for outreach. And I think there's been so much that's been available, like with the Met streaming their operas
Mm.
virtually, that people that couldn't access it before because they weren't in the city, or they didn't live in a big city with a big theater, they've been able to sort of from their home have
Mm.
access to all sorts of art and content in a really positive way. So
Yes. I mean, do you remember you're much younger than me, but I remember when I had to do like a report on Kiss of the Spider Woman
uh-huh.
in Philadelphia, and I had to go to New York, save up my money for the bus ticket, go to New York and go to the library, to the theatrical
I
library
love
to see
that.
the original playbill. And now it's like my son's like, "Oh, here's the blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, these
I
kids.
know. There's something about that adventure though, of
I
like
know.
seeking it out, but
I know, those days are gone, but, maybe,
different time.
it's a different time for sure. It's one for legends. I wonder if I know you have a close relationship with Mac, who I love and adore,
Yeah.
and I wondered if there was anything that you swear by for actors who are doing stage performances. Are there any products or anything that you're like, "These," if you don't have your own makeup designer for your
Yeah.
show, what would you remember those Ben Nye kits that you have to get
Oh,
with
I do. And the pancake and the light, medium, dark. And that's something that I definitely
light,
when
medium, dark.
as if people come in light, medium, dark. It's
Am I light?
absurd.
Am I medium?
And they're always pink and
Dark mid to gray. Yes.
so I will say to that point, I think stage makeup has become a lot more inclusive and
Yeah.
expansive in its, diversity and its color, skin tone representation, which is very, very important.
Thank God.
Yeah, and I would say having a good foundation, right, that really matches your skin tone, that is really good. And Mac has a really strong range, which is great. They have a pro long wear waterproof foundation that I love. I think it's got a good finish, and so you can sort of sheer it out, or you can make it really full coverage, and it really lasts, which is really, really great. I mean, something my sort of approach to stage makeup can be a little bit, I guess, untraditional. I think oftentimes we think of stage makeup as very matte
Yeah.
and sort of flat, and I really like dimension and sheen on the skin. So there are a few MAC products that I love that I'm sort of have to introduce stage performers to and sort of get
Interesting.
their trust. So like, oh, this is going to make me look shiny, and I could never use that. And I know what they mean. I know nobody wants to look shiny for sure, and I
Right,
sort of
right.
would
It's
never let that. But
associated with like effort.
yeah,
Like I'm
yeah, yeah,
singing. It means I looks like I'm,
exactly.
yeah.
But sheen is very alluring,
Yes.
and it can really add sort of this extra heightened
Yes.
effect to the skin that can be really catch the light and be very, very beautiful and really sort of elevate everything. So strobe cream is a product that I
Oh,
love,
that's my
that I
favorite.
think again is not it's my favorite. And it's like
Oh,
XIV, they were practically there. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. They are head to toe in strobe cream. It's like an
nice.
initiation.
Do they have a
Um,
strobe cream body cream? I
they
wonder.
used to. I don't know if they still have it. They
Okay.
had it for like a little bit, sort of this larger tub. But yeah, we go through so much strobe cream, and it really, again, it just like it takes you out of sort of this sort of pedestrian finish to your skin and just kind of really elevates everything. So I love strobe cream, and I also really love the cream color bases, just
Oh,
again to kind of hit those highlight planes of the face. Again, you don't even sort of you don't necessarily see them, but they do add this sort of extra layer of finish that I just think is so beautiful.
so when you're adding dimension, you're recessing and adding highlight. Those are the two elements that you're
Yeah, yeah.
referring.
Well, we will do some contouring,
Mhm.
but I tend to mostly like to highlight, but definitely sort of sometimes contouring the cheekbones and bridge of nose.
Okay, yeah. I think instead of like using so much like contrast in color, I feel like the most effective and efficient way to do it is to just add the highlight
Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then the rest happens naturally, kind
Yeah, yeah.
of. Oh, Sarah, it was so lovely talking to you. I can't think of anything else that we didn't cover. We got really detailed, and
Yeah,
then I know you sent over some images that we'll lay across so people can see
great.
everything that we're talking about. And I'm so grateful that you took this time with me. I
Oh,
know you have class to teach and minds to mold, and I'm so happy that you talked to us about all
oh,
this.
thanks so much for having me. It was really a pleasure, and I think especially those of us in theater, like we miss the work so much. So
Yes.
it's really nice to get the chance to sort of reconnect with what
Yeah.
we do and what we love. So
Okay, everybody, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for listening again, and please keep doing everything you're doing. Next week, we are talking to James Bomer. He is the global artist and director for Shiseido Makeup. And we're going to talk about some looks and talk about Shiseido. And it is a very, very, very detailed and amazing conversation, especially for people who are curious what goes into creating an entire line. So I'm really, really excited to share it with you guys. And I can't wait to see you next week. Look Behind the Look is a Vinyl Foot production, written by me, your host, Tiffany Bartok, produced by Jace Bartok, and produced and edited by Kelly Riley, with audio engineering by Nicole Tucker. If you're interested in learning more, find our video version on the YouTube channel Look Behind the Look podcast. There you can see rare photos and clips from our guests. And please follow us on Twitter at LookBehindPod and Instagram at LookBehindTheLook. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe. And tell your friends and spread the word. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or any podcatcher of your choice. Thanks for listening to Look Behind the Look.